You must sway your hips when you walk. Not like you're in a hurry, no. Walk like the breeze is pushing you. Let those hips speak in tongues. Ewo, Chizaram gasped. Amiji, are you sure this would work? Work? Of course. Don't you trust me? These tips are tested and trusted. Once upon a time, in the quiet and enchanting village of Oka, where the trees whispered secrets and the streams sang beautiful songs, there lived a very beautiful maiden whose name was Chizaram. Chizaram wasn't just beautiful. She carried a kind of quiet grace that made her stand out without trying. She had grown up in the loving arms of her grandmother Uremma, a wise old woman with a curved back, sharp tongue, and a heart as soft as butter left too long in the sun. Uremma had raised her single-handedly after Chizaram's mother, Agbo, who had gotten pregnant as a teenager, eloped with a man to the city, and since then, no one had heard from her. Life wasn't exactly a festival for Chizaram and Uremma. They had little, sometimes nothing, but they had each other, and somehow that was enough. Uremma often joked, "We may not have a chicken in our pot, but we have peace. And peace doesn't make you fat anyhow, like meat does." Chizaram would laugh. Her laughter, like the sound of tinkling bells, that made even her tired grandmother forget her pains for a moment. Over the years, Chizaram grew gracefully, like a flower that didn't know it was blooming. She became not only beautiful, but gentle, humble, and fiercely responsible. Uremma, even in her old age and failing health, watched her granddaughter with pride swelling in her chest. Unlike the other village maidens, who thought life was all about twisting waists and applying red lipstick like war paint, Chizaram had no such luxury. While they catwalked daily to the village square like one-legged chickens, hoping to catch the attention of a man with a bicycle, full pockets, or clean fingernails, Chizaram had no time to chase shadows. Her grandmother, who had raised her with so much love, was now sick and needed care. That was all that mattered to her right now. There was no time or money to make fancy hairstyles or buy matching Ankara gowns with butterfly sleeves. Her hair was often packed into a rough bun, her clothes old and faded, but her eyes, those eyes still shone with determination. Chizaram would take on any job, so long as it was honest. She weeded people's farms until her palms blistered. She fetched water, firewood, swept compounds, cooked meals, and did anything that could earn her money. No task was too hard or dirty for her, as long as it brought a few coins home. Each time she returned, her grandmother would hold her hands, whisper blessings with tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. "You are the child I didn't give birth to," she would say, "but you are a gift to me from the gods." Even the village elders took notice of how different Chizaram was and would always support and encourage her. "Chizaram," they would say with approving nods, handing her extra coins after a day's work. "It's not every day we see a beautiful girl like you who chooses a hoe over a handbag. Keep it up." And she would smile, curtsy, and walk away quietly, her spirit strong, but her heart carrying more burdens than anyone knew. In the various compounds of the villagers, Chizaram's name was on everyone's lips, especially parents who needed to knock some sense into their lazy daughters. "Can't you see that girl?" a mother would bark while dragging her child by the ear. "Fine girl like that, yet You will never see her parading herself like an Adama masquerade in the village square. Look at how focused she is, working from sunrise to sunset just to take care of her sick grandmother. And you, all you do is twist your waist like an orange seller and bring shame to this family. Of course, these words were meant to inspire change, but instead of admiration, they brewed something darker in the hearts of the village maidens. Jealousy, like bitter leaf juice in an empty stomach. I'm so tired of hearing about that Chizaram girl, one maiden hissed one afternoon, as she adjusted her clothes and stomped towards the village square for the daily men hunting parade. I swear, sometimes I just wish she would die or maybe disappear. It's always Chizaram this, Chizaram that. My mother won't let me drink water and drop the cup again in peace. One of these days, I might just run mad. You too? Another would chip in with a dramatic sigh. I thought I was the only one. My mother even dreams about her, and it makes me feel like squeezing the life out of that girl myself. Always walking like she's perfect, like she's better than the rest of us. Which better? With those spider legs of hers? Rubbish, another would hiss. And just like that, their bitterness fermented into full-blown hatred. They gave her all sorts of names. Mbweke, local champion, sufferhead. The kind of insults that stung more than pepper in open wounds. Anytime they saw Chizaram walking past with her firewood or basket of yams, they would burst into loud, exaggerated laughter just to mock her. See how she looks, like someone who baths with leftover pap water. Smelly sufferhead. I beg, who will even marry that one? They would jeer, loud enough for her to hear. Chizaram, poor girl, never understood why these girls hated her so much. She had never insulted anyone. She never looked down on anyone. She was just living her life quietly and doing her best to survive. But somehow, that made her a target. The hate wasn't just painful, it was confusing. Still, she never let her focus shake. She worked all day, but at night she allowed herself to dream. While massaging her grandmother's tired legs or blowing out the flickering oil lamp, Chizaram would close her eyes as she imagined the kind of man she would love to settle down with. A handsome man, tall, slim, wealthy, a prince or the son of a chief. He would be a very kind man who would love her so much. The thought of that alone brought a million smiles to her face. Maybe then, she could finally rest from all her sufferings. Years rolled by like water down a slope, and Chizaram blossomed. Her beauty matured into something that was no longer just pretty. It was striking. Her skin glowed with natural grace, her smile gentle yet captivating. But through it all, she remained focused, hardworking, and respectful. Just as Urema had raised her, and continued taking care of her grandmother whose sickness had only worsened over the years. Yet, something strange, almost mysterious, began to happen. Her mates, even the wildest of them, you know those ones whose names were whispered behind closed doors because of the number of men they had slept with in the bush, were all getting married, one after the other. The village was overflowing with steady celebrations as families gave their daughters' hands in marriage. But Chizaram, not even a knock on the door, not even a man to say hello, not even a widower with 5 children looking for help. At first, she shook it off. After all, Mama always said everyone has their own time, yours will come. But how long was one supposed to wait for a clock that refused to tick? Years down the line, her mates now had husbands. Some rich, some drunkards, but At least they were married and they had babies strapped to their backs or crawling around their feet. Meanwhile, Chizaram was still fetching firewood, still pounding yam, still running errands to get paid, while praying for a man to notice her. Yet, she remained invincible. It was like the universe had pressed pause on her love life, while everyone else's was playing in fast forward. One warm evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Chizaram dressed in her faded clothes and headed to the village market. Her plan was simple: buy a small cut of meat, some vegetables, and maybe a few spices if her money stretched. Her grandmother had been craving soup, and Chizaram, no matter how tired or broke, always tried to grant her every small wish. But fate, as usual, had other plans. As she made her way through the dusty stalls, ducking between baskets of onions and the noisy calls of women selling okporoko and egusi, she stepped into a big store that smelled of soap, new nylon and money. And there she was, Amara. Oh, Amara, loud, flashy, and unshakably proud. Once an ordinary village maiden like Chizaram, Amara had somehow landed herself a rich husband, Chief Omenka, an old man with 3 wives and a belly big enough to rest a calabash on. Though Amara was the 3rd wife, the chief had opened a massive store for her in the market, and now she walked like the ground owed her thanks for carrying her. As Chizaram entered, Amara looked up from behind her counter, and her eyes widened with dramatic shock, as though she had just seen a goat enter wearing lipstick. Who am I seeing? Ewo! Is this not Chizaram, the Mbeke girl? She shouted, loud enough to attract the attention of half the market. She stood up, hands on her hips, and scanned Chizaram from head to toe with the disgust of someone sniffing bad soup. This is unbelievable. Look at you. What happened now? Growing up, it was always Chizaram this, Chizaram that. My parents even said you had a bright future. But now, she paused, snapping her fingers dramatically. It looks like that your bright future has lots of stains, oh. Just look at you. You couldn't even find yourself a man. This is so pathetic. All your mates are married, and you are still walking up and down like a rejected sacrifice. Tofiawa, I reject this kind of suffer-head-cursed life. I wonder who you offended in your past life. Sophia! And with that final insult, Amara bent low, spat loudly into the sand and clapped her hands together in mockery, laughing that kind of laugh that scraped the soul. Chizaram froze. Her legs were shaking. Her throat tightened. Her fingers curled around the few naira notes in her hand. She stood there for a moment, unsure of whether to cry, scream, or vanish into thin air. The worst part, Amara was right about her life being cursed. At least, it felt like she was. Because what other explanation was there? Chizaram had done everything right. She had kept herself pure, lived humbly, walked like a mule, and obeyed every word her grandmother ever spoke. Yet, nothing to show for it. No husband, no proposal, nothing. As she left the store in shame, her heart was already cracking. She walked through the market with blurred vision, tears stinging her eyes. The vegetables in her basket felt heavier than normal. She ignored the noise, the laughter, the music from a nearby palm wine joint. All she could hear were Amara's words echoing inside her head like a curse. Why has no man ever come for my hand in marriage? Why am I so invincible? Is something wrong with me? Am I that ugly? By the time she got home, the sun had disappeared, and the sky was bruised with darkness. She forced a smile for Uremma, who lay coiled on the mat, but inside her, there was only sadness, a quiet storm that no one could see. That night, after cooking and serving her grandmother, Chizaram crawled into her wooden bed in her hut, but she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned. Amara's words kept playing in her mind like a broken drum beat, and the weight of her single life pressed heavily against her chest. Tears soaked her pillow as she whispered a broken prayer into the silence of the night. And finally, sometime past midnight, exhausted and heartbroken, Chizaram drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, after the long night of tears and twisted sleep, Chizaram dragged herself to Mami J's farm. Of course, she still needed to work. The sun was already hanging high and the air smelled of dried earth and roasted yam from nearby huts. She worked hard, pushing her tired limbs to weed and water like a machine. But even the cassava leaves seemed to notice she was not her usual self. When the day's work was done, she slowly made her way to Mama Ije's compound to collect her pay. Normally, she would arrive with a cheerful smile and a loud "Good afternoon, Mama Ije," that echoed through the air like music. But not today. Today, her face was long, her shoulders slumped. Her eyes, dull and swollen from the night before, barely looked up. Mama Ije, a plump and kind-hearted woman in her early 60s, noticed immediately. She squinted at her. "Chizaram, my daughter, are you okay? You don't look happy today. What happened?" Chizaram stared at the ground in silence. Her heart was full and her throat ached with words that had been buried too long. She took a deep breath, walked slowly to the bench in front of the mud hut and sat down. Then, without warning, the tears came again, hot, heavy, uncontrollable. "Mama Ije, tell me the truth. Am I not beautiful?" she choked, her voice trembling like a dry leaf in the wind. "Do I not look good? Do you think I won't make a good wife?" Mama Ije blinked, confused. "What are you saying, Chizaram? What is all this talk about?" "I am tired, Mama Ije. I am tired of suffering, tired of waiting endlessly for nothing. All my mates are married. Some are even giving birth to their 5th children. But me, nobody sees me. No one talks to me. What do these girls have that I don't? Or is it that I am cursed?" There was a long pause. Then, suddenly, Mama Ije burst into laughter. The kind of laughter that starts from the belly and shakes the chest. Chizaram looked at her stunned. Still giggling, Mama Ije reached for Chizaram's hand and held it gently. "My dear child, you are beautiful, more beautiful than half of those girls married to men that beat them like drums. And you don't lack anything. But let me ask you, do men live inside the bush, or on the farm paths, or under yam moods?" Chizaram looked puzzled. "Yes, because this is where you spend all your time," Mama Ije continued, still smiling. "Always hiding inside one farm or the other, like a squirrel. You don't even stop to look yourself in the mirror. Just look at your hair, like old broom, and your clothes. They've seen more sun than the village roof." Even Chizaram couldn't help but chuckle through her tears. Being beautiful and having a good character is wonderful. But my dear, even yam sellers decorate their tables to attract customers. You must position yourself where and in a manner you can be found. A ripe fruit still needs to hang where the eyes can see it. Chizaram sighed deeply. But Mama Ije, how can I be buying clothes and braiding my hair when Mama Urima is lying sick in the hut, barely eating? I struggle to buy her medicine. Talk more of changing hairstyles and fine clothes. I'm just trying so hard to survive. Mama Ije's eyes softened. She placed a warm hand on Chizaram's shoulder. Then, let me help you. I have a solution. Henceforth, you will stop working on people's farms. It's time for a change. She stood up and disappeared into her hut. A few moments later, she returned with a folded bundle of colorful Ankara fabrics and a small envelope with money inside. You will work with Nora, the village cook, at her food joint in the market. Lots of men, village men, strangers, traders, they all go there to eat. That is where you will shine, my daughter. That is where your husband will find you in no time. She's my very good friend and I will talk to her. She handed the items to Chizaram. Use these fabrics, sew beautiful dresses. Make your hair with the money in the envelope. Look good. Your Prince Charming might just be closer than you think. Chizaram's lips trembled as she fell to her knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. Tears poured down her cheeks. Mama Ije, I don't even know what to say. Mama Ije pulled her close in a warm embrace. Say nothing, my child. You're a good girl and you deserve the very best. It's time the world see the beauty I've always seen in you. Getting Nora to accept Chizaram wasn't hard at all. In fact, it was so easy that Mama Ije had to pause and check if the world was ending. She had barely finished her sentence when Nora clapped her hand and said, "Ah, that's good girl, bring her tomorrow, I beg." It was the easiest yes Mama Ije had ever gotten in her entire life. Everyone in the village knew Chizaram was hardworking and had a very beautiful heart. And so, just like that, a brand new chapter opened for our dear Chizaram. But before she resumed her new role, Mama Ije gave her a crash course in how to catch a husband in 3 days or less. It was a seminar no one asked for, but Chizaram listened like her life depended on it. First, Mama Ije said, with the seriousness of a chief priest, "You must always wear a smile. My husband said he fell in love with me because I smile like roasted corn. So smile. Wide, even when your back is paining you. Men like happy women." Chizaram nodded. Second, when you're talking to a man, look into his eyes. Deeply. Like you're trying to read his destiny. And blink. Small, small. Let your lashes work for you. Chizaram nodded again, blinking 5 times in 10 seconds. And finally, Mama Ije whispered, like she was sharing the secret of the gods. You must sway your hips when you walk. Not like you're in a hurry, no. Walk like the breeze is pushing you. Let those hips speak in tongues. Ewo, Chizaram gasped. Mama Ije, are you sure this would work? Work? Of course. Don't you trust me? These tips are tested and trusted. That night, instead of sleeping, Chizaram stayed up practicing. She stood before the cracked mirror in her hut, grinning so wide that her cheeks started cramping. She blinked so many times that a mosquito almost got dizzy trying to land on her face. And the hips? You should have seen her walking back and forth like an overfed peacock in the midst of a half-drunk goat. She clapped her hands with excitement at her progress. Tomorrow, they will propose to me with cowries and palm wine, she declared. And then came the next day. dressed in her finest new Ankara gown. With freshly plaited hair, Chizaram stepped into Nora's food joint like a beauty queen on a mission. And Mama Ije was right. The place was packed with men. Fat men, slim men, tall ones with walking sticks, short ones with pot bellies, even married men pretending to be bachelors. They were all there, slopping soup and gossiping over plates of pounded yam. Chizaram went into full action. She sashayed from table to table, her hips swinging left and right like a snake that had gone to Bible school. She smiled like her cheeks were going to tear, and every time a man asked for more water or an extra spoon, she stared deeply into his eyes and blinked like a frog caught in a sandstorm. The result? Confusion. The men stared at her in silent concern. One even whispered to Nora, "Auntie, sorry but that's your new girl. Is she okay like this? I mean, is her eye spinning her or did the fly enter her eye?" By the end of the first day, Chizaram's hopes had started to sink like apple in cold soup. No man had smiled back. No one had even asked for her name, talk more of proposing. They just gave her this weird look like she was crazy. She went home, discouraged but still hopeful. "Maybe I didn't swing my hips enough," she told herself. "I will try harder tomorrow." But by the end of the week, the matter had gone from bad to worse. Chizaram had become the unofficial evening comedy show. The men now looked forward to coming to Nora's food stall. This time, it wasn't just to come and eat. They wanted something more. And once they saw Chizaram coming, they would burst into laughter like schoolboys. Not because she said anything funny, but because they were honestly wondering whether she was well, like normal, because who acts like that? And it didn't even end there. When they sat around in the night, sipping palm wine and gossiping like old women, they would never fail to mention the girl at Nora's joint, who walks like a pregnant antelope and battered her lashes like a chicken drowning in the water. They would laugh until their sides hurt, slapping their thighs and spilling drinks as they imitated her walk and dramatic blinking. Yes, Chizaram was finally popular among the men, but just not in the way she had expected. She had become a full laughingstock in the village. Weeks passed, then months. Still, not a single suitor had come up, not even a drunk palm wine tapper. But did Chizaram give up? Never. She remained determined, still perfecting her blink until you go blind strategy and swinging her hips like her waist was in a wrestling match, even when her cheeks began to develop permanent smiling lines and her knees clicked like old door hinges. She kept on hoping. Then, one fateful afternoon, as the sun burned mercilessly and flies danced around bowls of soup, everything changed. Chizaram was busy serving one quarrelsome customer when he walked in. And when I say he walked in, I mean the earth stood still. Her eyes landed on him, and she nearly dropped the bowl of soup on her own foot. She was staring at a man that looked like he had just fallen from the sky. Tall, dark, slim, fine. So fine that he looked like he had been carved by angels and sprinkled with coconut oil. His beard connected, his skin glowed, and his smile, like roasted plantain dipped in honey. Chizaram's heart did a triple somersault. "That is him," she whispered to herself, gripping the tray like her destiny was balanced on it. "The one I have been waiting for." Before anyone could say Owa and Okporoko, She had activated full romantic attack mode. With her head high, hips alert, and blinking eyes fully loaded, she approached his table like a beauty queen who had just spotted her crown. "Hello," she greeted, stretching her smile so wide that her cheeks almost touched her ears. The man looked up, and for the first time in her life, a man didn't look at her like she was having some kind of spiritual problem. Instead, he smiled back, genuinely. And when he spoke, his voice came out like soft velvet. "I hear you sell the best food here. I'm new in town, and I would love you to surprise me." Chizaram's eyes widened. "Just the best food?" she asked, placing her hand gently on the table, like a seasoned flirt. "Then you didn't hear well. We don't just sell food here. We do many other things. You can also find a very good wife here. A wife who can take very good care of you," she ended, with her signature smile that could make a baby cry. The man chuckled. In fact, he looked like he was fighting laughter. "Wow. I'm sorry I underestimated your services, madam," he replied, his eyes twinkling. "But I will start with your best dish, at least for now." Chizaram curtsied like a real queen, turned around, and headed to the kitchen with enough hip action to make the floor tremble. She nearly cracked her waist bone trying to impress him. She was walking like a pregnant flamingo, possessed by the spirit of Beyoncé, twisting her waist in slow dramatic motion. She hoped and prayed that he was watching, and oh, he was. He stared so hard that he nearly fell off his chair laughing. The two men sitting next to him couldn't hold it in any longer. They also joined in the laughter. "Is she okay?" the fine stranger asked. The man replied with a shrug. "She hasn't hurt anyone yet, so we think she is." Back in the kitchen, Chizaram was floating. She couldn't stop smiling. Her hands trembled as she dished his food, and when she served it, her heart did 10 cartwheels. Later that night, as she lay on her wooden bed, she didn't sleep. She floated as she thought about the handsome stranger. His name was Ifenna, and he had told her he was new in Oka, selling Ankara fabrics at the village market. But to Chizaram, he wasn't just a fabric seller. He was the fabric of her future. She clutched her wrapper and giggled into the darkness, replaying his smile like a favorite song. The butterflies in her belly were doing a full traditional dance with drums and all. Never had she felt this way before. They had exchanged eye contact, deep, strong, intentional eye contact, and she was so sure Ifenna liked her. She didn't sleep until it was almost daybreak, and even in her dreams, she and Ifenna sat by the river, laughing over something she just couldn't explain. The next afternoon, Chizaram transformed into a full-time private investigator. She wore her best dress, styled her hair into a puff that defied gravity, and marched off to Nora's stall. But while her hands were busy serving plates of steaming fufu and goat's meat soup, her eyes were also busy scanning the entrance like a CCTV camera. Where was he? Ifenna, her Ankara prince, her sugar in human form, her destiny with a beard. She had even secretly dished out a plate of very delicious soup with so much meat in it that she was sure Nora would faint if she ever saw it. But he didn't show up. Was he sick? No. That man didn't look like someone sickness could ever near. His muscles had muscles. Maybe he had traveled, or worse, was he married? There was no way she would be able to sleep tonight with all the questions dancing in her head. So, she did what any smart future wife would do. She went to look for him herself. Finding him was surprisingly easy. All she did was ask 2 villagers and boom, there he was, sitting in front of his hut like the gentle prince in a home video, beside an elderly woman who looked like she birthed the whole wisdom of the village. His eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Chizaram," he called out in that soft, calm voice that made her knees melt. Oh, he remembered her name. This meant that he had been thinking of her. That thought alone gave her chest a dramatic orchestral performance. I didn't see you today and decided to bring you some food," she stammered. "And also to check if you're settling in fine." "That's very thoughtful of you," Ifena smiled. "I had to travel down to my place to bring my mother in today. She's not been feeling well, so I want her to stay here with me." This was a very big opportunity and Chizaram grabbed it immediately with 2 hands. "Ewo, Mama is not feeling well," she gasped. "Should I come and boil herbs for her tomorrow or cook meat pepper soup with local spices? I know how to do all those things. My grandmother is always falling sick too, and I promise it works like magic." "Really? You would do all that for my mother?" Ifena asked, looking genuinely surprised. "That one? It's very small compared to what I can do," she said proudly, chesting out like a soldier receiving a badge. "Just say the word. I'm a very nice person, no? Ask anybody." "You really are. Thank you so much. I will be expecting you tomorrow." Ah, that was all she needed. She was flying as she walked back home. He had smiled. He had thanked her. And he had even said he would be expecting her. That night, she barely slept. She lay on her bed giggling like a child licking stolen honey, imagining Ifena kneeling with kola nuts and palm wine, asking her to marry him. By morning, she had entered full housewife 101 mode. She stormed the market, bought herbs, meat, seasoning cubes, onions, and even a fresh broom. By the time she got to Ifena's compound, he wasn't home, but that didn't stop her. No water, no problem. She carried 2 calabashes to the river and filled his water drum till her back started spelling danger. She swept the compound, rearranged the chairs, and then headed into the kitchen to cook, with full voice, singing love songs like someone possessed already by the angel of love. Ifena returned and stopped at the door, confused. The compound was sparkling. The water drum was filled up and the air smelled delicious. And there was Chizaram, stirring the soup while singing and dancing joyfully. You did all this?" he asked, his eyes wide. Chizaram turned around with the smile of a woman who had claimed spiritual ownership. "Ah, this one? This is small, Lou. Don't worry, I am here for you. You don't have to carry Mama's burden alone again. But you don't have to go through all this stress for me. I can handle things. But Chizaram cut in quickly before he even finished. "You are too kind, Ifena. You don't really have to pamper me this much, oh. Me, I don't run from responsibilities. I have been working my whole life. In fact, I was born for this." Ifena blinked, then shrugged. "Well, if you say so." And just like that, Chizaram landed a full housewife job, without pay, without bride price or invitation. Every morning, after checking on Urema and ensuring she was fine and had all she needed, she would sprint to Ifena's house like a civil servant late for duty. There, she would sweep, wash, fetch water, bath Mama, feed Mama, cook, clean the compound, then rush back to Nora's joint like a tired gladiator. Before long, the village began to buzz like a faulty generator. Did you hear that Chizaram now lives in that new Ifena man's house every morning? Are they married? Is she doing house girl work or love apprenticeship? Tongues wagged, eyes rolled, but Chizaram, she didn't care. To her, love was war, and she was on the battlefield. She believed it was just a matter of time. Surely, Ifena would propose any moment from now. But time passed, and passed, and passed again. All she kept getting from Ifena were kind smiles and soft thank yous. No proposal, no romantic touches, not even a casual "who is your father" or, tell me about yourself. Nothing. By her own calculations, they were supposed to be married with a child on its way by now. But no, it was as if she had married herself in her own mind. Still, as the elders would say, love is patience. And Chizaram, with the strength of 100 heartbreaks, was willing to wait. One afternoon, as the aroma of bubbling soup filled the air at Nora's food stand, disaster struck. Nora suddenly paused mid-stair and sniffed suspiciously. Something was missing. "Ah, ogiri," she gasped, slapping her thigh. "I forgot to buy ogiri. This soup will taste like sorrow." Before panic could fully settle in, she turned to her ever-faithful Chizaram. "Please, Nne, run to the market and get ogiri for me. Don't waste time, oh. If this soup doesn't turn out well, some people will think I don't know what I'm doing again." "I want to waste time," Chizaram replied, grabbing her clothes like a warrior going to battle. She sprinted off, her slippers flipping like a talking drum, determined to return as soon as possible. But just as she stepped into the bustling village market, she noticed a small crowd gathered around a wooden table. What's happening here again, she wondered, slowing down despite herself. She stood on tiptoe to peek, then decided to just go take a quick look and maybe find out what was happening. "I won't waste time, I need to get ogiri," she reminded herself. "What's going on here?" she asked an elderly woman as she got close to the spot. The woman didn't look up. She simply mumbled with dramatic mystery, "There is a powerful woman behind that curtain. She solves all problems: love, money, childlessness, and even sickness. Once you tell her your problems, she would provide the perfect solution. And it's free." Chizaram's eyes widened. Free? Bam! This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Destiny had clearly planned this meeting, and she wasn't going to miss it for anything. "Let me just take a quick look. I want to waste time," she whispered to herself again like a lying friend. She tried squeezing herself into the queue, mentally calculating how long it would take to get back to Nora before the soup turned into disaster. But before she could fully panic, a loud voice from the inside called, "You, yes, you with the tired eyes and confused waist, come in." It was as if fate had been waiting for her. Inside, she met Ezenwai, the woman of the hour, draped in 10 layers of wrappers and cowries hanging like Christmas ornaments. Her face was painted in white chalk and she had a goat skull tied to her walking stick. "Young woman, what do you want Ezenwai to do for you?" she asked, looking straight into Chizaram's soul. "I see you tried too hard to find love, but love dodges your efforts like a rat dodging hot water. Yet, your heart is pure." Tears rushed down Chizaram's face like flood water. "Please help me, Ezenwai. I heard you solve all problems. Mine, as you said, is love. Big love problem. Ezenwai suddenly burst into a dramatic song, shaking a rattle, her voice rising like thunder in the pot of pepper soup. After a good minute of shouting, "Love shall not disgrace you," she stopped, adjusted her head tie and said calmly, "There is hope. You have met the real love doctor. I have the solution to all kinds of romantic headache. Tell me, what do you want exactly?" Chizaram, now crying like a child who lost her meat in the soup, said, "His name is Ifena. I want him to love me, to see me like I see him, to marry me. I am tired of being the village laughingstock. I just want to be a wife." Ezenwai nodded knowingly. "Wipe your tears, young woman. It's over. Ifena is yours already." She reached under her seat and pulled out a mysterious leaf wrap, tied tightly like it had national secrets inside. "This is a very special ogiri. I traveled across rivers and mountains to collect it. Cook a delicious soup with it. Make sure only Ifena eats it. No sharing. If any other man eats it, his chest will beat louder than the New Yam Festival drums." Chizaram blinked. She didn't understand what Ezenwai meant, but she didn't even bother to ask for clarification. At this point, all she was thinking about was getting married to Ifena. She grabbed the ogiri like it was her bride price and thanked Ezenwai with so much joy that you would think she had just collected a visa. Then, she rushed off to buy the original ogiri that brought her to the market. "Please, let Nora not bite my ear when I return," she muttered, clutching both ogiris, one for soup, one for destiny. The sun was high and Nora's soup pot was steaming when Chizaram tiptoed back into the stall like a thief returning from a failed mission. "What took you so long?" Nora snapped angrily, hands on her waist. "I told you to hurry. Look at customers are waiting. She wants them to chew raw fufu without soup. Quick, serve them water, let me add the ogiri." Chizaram panicked as her heartbeat started drumming like a spiritual masquerade festival. This was the first time Nora had ever scolded her or raised a voice at her. And she knew she had really messed up. She quickly dropped the 2 wraps and ran off to serve the customers. Meanwhile, Nora, who was in full chef mode, opened the wraps and without a second thought, dumped both into a bubbling pot of soup. The aroma that followed was enough to wake an unconscious cow. Within a few minutes, the soup was ready. People were eating and licking their fingers, as if they had just discovered heaven in a bowl. "Nora, this soup today, it tastes like something angels cooked in their free time," one man shouted, smacking his lips. "I'm not a low-class cook," Nora shouted back proudly. Chizaram was still smiling until Ifena walked in. Immediately, her brain did backflip. Her eyes darted to the table where she had dropped the magical ogiri, but it was gone, completely gone. Her soul left her body and returned in slow motion. Nora, a dead boat. Oh my God, she cooked the 2. Fear gripped her. If that ogiri had entered the soup and everyone was eating it, what was about to happen? Well, it started slowly. First, a young man jumped onto the table like a confused goat, grabbed a spoon as a microphone, and began singing. "Chizaram, marry me today, oh. I will sweep your compound with my bare hands." She was still blinking, in shock, when she heard another voice, deep, familiar, and even more dramatic. "Chizaram." It was Chief Udu. the village stingy billionaire who had 6 hungry wives and still carried his money around in a black nylon bag like a born-again squirrel. He stood up, sweating and shaking like his money just grew wings. "Chizaram, take my money bag. All of it. Take it. Just marry me, please." He dropped the nylon bag at her feet and started rolling on the floor. People gasped. But that was just the beginning. More men joined in. Some cried, some beat their chest, some took off their shirts, and to crown it all, even the village madman who Nora always fed walked in, dropped his stick and said gently, "Chizaram, my heart beats for you. Please marry me." Chizaram's eyes widened so much that they nearly jumped out of her face. Even Ifenna, yes, the love of her life, got on his knees, holding his chest as if he had swallowed thunder. That was it. Her head was spinning, and all she could hear was, "Marry me, marry me, marry me." She didn't wait to see how the movie would end. Chizaram screamed and took off like a scared chicken, running as fast as her legs could carry her wrapper flying, slippers slapping the ground, and her voice rising into the sky. "Leave me alone! Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" But the men chased after her. Chief Udu with his money bag, the madman with a stick, and a line of confused villagers who had all eaten the soup and suddenly believed Chizaram was the answer to their problems. The villagers peeked through their compounds, watching the chase like an African Netflix movie premiere. She reached her hut, flung the door shut, and locked it with the speed of a widow hiding her husband's will, and stood inside, trembling like a rat caught in Harmattan rain. Outside, the madness continued. "Chizaram, open! I will build you a mansion. Chizaram, come out and take all my land documents. You are my oxygen, Chizaram. Without you, I will faint." Even at midnight, the nonsense didn't stop. Some men sat by her window, singing love songs that sounded like frogs with heartbreak. By morning, it had escalated into a full-blown romantic war zone. Gifts were stacked in front of her hut. Yam, wrappers, phone chargers, catfish, and even a bag of onions. Men were climbing her roof, banging on her window and begging her to come out like she was a goddess hiding from humanity. Inside the hut, Chizaram stood in one corner, shaking, looking at the door as though it would burst open any second. This was not how it was supposed to go. She had only wanted Ifenna. Now, even the village coffin maker was outside, crying that his heart had entered her hands. The commotion brought the entire village to her compound. Women were weeping as they watched their husbands fight over her. Mothers were pulling their sons by the ear, screaming, "You are disgracing me! You are disgracing me! You are betrothed to Ngozi! What are you doing here?" And then, one bold woman, after watching her own husband kneel and recite a poem with palm wine in his mouth, had had enough. This is not ordinary. Chizaram has done something to these men. We can't keep quiet. She must come out here and confess what she has done so that we can end this madness. Wham! The other villagers chorused. "We cannot allow this in Oka. She must come out now." The sun had barely risen above the rooftops when the villagers could no longer hold themselves back. The noise outside Chizaram's hut had become deafening. A wave of voices, sharpened with rage, betrayal, and confusion. Then, like a thunderclap in the dry season, the door was flung open and they dragged Chizaram out. Their faces were stiff with fury. Mothers clutched their wrappers in disbelief. Wives stood behind their husbands with red eyes. Men held sticks, pounding them against the earth as they demanded answers. The cries of the love-struck, bewitched men still echoed through the village, pleading, screaming, chanting Chizaram's name. And there she was, on her knees, her wrapper dusty, her body trembling, eyes soaked in tears. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she choked, her voice cracking like dry leaves. I only wanted Ifena to love me, to ask me to marry him. I just wanted to get married. There was a moment of silence before a furious voice broke through the crowd. Then, what did you do? One man roared, stepping forward. Her words trembled, her lips refusing to move fast enough. Speak! Another voice thundered. A man, whose face was contorted with rage, lifted a stick, storming towards her. Chizaram flinched, her breath catching her throat. She looked around. So many faces. Angry, disappointed, confused. And behind it all, the wailing of husbands and sons, whose minds had been hijacked by something no one could explain. Finally, she spoke. A whisper at first, then louder. It's Ezenwai, she said, sobbing. She gave me something, a special ogiri. She said it would make Ifena love me if I cooked with it. But Nara didn't know. She added it to the whole soup. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a flood of fire. Hey! 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 Aru! Abomination! Someone screamed. I knew this wasn't ordinary. Love portion! Chizaram fed our sons and husbands love portion. The voices exploded into anger. Someone spat on the ground. Another woman began to wail. The ground itself seemed to tremble under the weight of betrayal. Among the elders, one shook his head slowly, sadness lining every crease on his face. This is the same Chizaram we all praised. The girl we saw as a role model of purity and strength, he muttered in disbelief. How could she be this desperate, this dangerous? I'm so disappointed. But the women were no longer holding back. Undo it, they screamed. Undo what you've done, or we will finish you with our bare hands today. They surged forward, dragging Chizaram roughly by her arm out of the compound, through the dusty streets. Her cries pierced the air. Please, I don't mean to. I don't know how to undo it. But no one listened. No one cared. Worst of all, she truly didn't know how to find Ezenwai. After hours of being marched around and questioned, it became painfully clear. No one in the market even remembered seeing the woman. It was as if she had appeared from the wind and disappeared into it. And now, Chizaram sat in the village square, surrounded by people who once admired her. Her wrapper was torn, her face swollen from crying, her knees ached, her spirit was shattered. Voices rose all around her, pointing, cursing, spitting. Shameless girl, witch, you are a disgrace to womanhood. Not one voice defended her. And what hurt even more than the shame was the thought of Urimma, lying helplessly in their hearts, too sick to move or even speak. If she had known what her granddaughter had done, Chizaram didn't even want to imagine the disappointment in her eyes. She stared blankly into the ground as waves of regret drowned her. If only she had waited. If only she had listened. If only she hadn't touched that cursed Ogiri. Now, as the sun climbed higher and the villagers whispered and waited, they prepared for the arrival of the chief priest, the only one they now believed might undo this madness. Chizaram sat alone, shivering under the weight of her humiliation. Her dreams scattered like ashes in the wind, and her fate now lay in the hands of Ezedibia, the chief priest. What ever happened next? One thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. The sharp clang of Ezedibia's bell soon echoed through the village square like a judgment drum. The villagers fell silent as the chief priest himself, adorned in red chalk, feathers and cowrie beads, marched into view, chanting words no one could ever understand but dared not question. His chant continued as he circled Chizaram 3 full times, his bell ringing with every step. The heat of the sun, the whispers of the villagers, and the madness of the men still shouting her name all melted into a thick, choking silence. Finally, he stopped. The cure to this madness lies in a pot of bitterleaf soup, cooked with tears, he said. A murmur rose in the air. A soup prepared with tears, the villagers repeated, their faces puzzled. Yes, Ezedibia declared firmly. Chizaram must offer a fat goat to the gods as sacrifice. Then, she must prepare a bitterleaf soup, not just with water, but with tears from her very eyes. Only when the men eat that soup will their senses return. Gasp filled the square. Heads turned to Chizaram, who by now felt as though her soul had left her body. A goat? Where on earth was she supposed to find a fat goat? She had spent everything she had, her money, her time, her strength, trying to win Ifena's love. All she had left were regret and shame. You have until sundown to find the items for the sacrifice, Ezedibia warned. Tomorrow, we break the spell. As she walked back home, every step felt heavier than the last. The sun had begun to drop, casting long shadows, and though she kept her head bowed, she could still feel the weight of the villagers' stares. Some hissed, others spat, a few cursed aloud as she passed. If shame had a face, it was Chizaram, dusty, broken and alone. She finally reached home and collapsed under the tree by her hut, her whole body trembling as tears poured freely. She had brought humiliation not just on herself, but on her grandmother, on everything she had tried to stand for. She thought being single was bad, but this kind of humiliation was worse. As the sky darkened and the world around her slipped into stillness, Chizaram still had no solution, no hope, no way forward. Then, one thought crossed her mind. Nora. She knew Nora had every reason to hate her now, but she had no one else to turn to. She walked slowly to Nora's compound. The older woman was seated in front of her hut, arms folded, with her eyes on the ground. Chizaram braced herself for shouting, scolding, curses, for flying slippers, but none came. Nora didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. She simply sat there, as still as a carved statue. Chizaram dropped to her knees immediately. Please, I'm so sorry, Nora. I ruined your business. I hurt you. I broke your trust. I was stupid. I was desperate. Please, forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I am truly sorry. Her voice trembled with each word, and somewhere in that trembling, Something in Nora's heart cracked. She looked at the girl who had once been her most trusted helper, now sobbing at her feet like a lost child. And she remembered herself years ago, also broken by the weight of expectations. "I understand, Chizaram," she said quietly. Chizaram looked up, confused. "If there's anyone who understands your pain, it is me," Nora continued. Then, for the first time, Nora told her story. "I didn't marry until I was in my 30s. The village mocked me. They called me an old maid, a waste. So, when the first man came along, I grabbed him, even though I knew he wasn't right. I endured 6 years of tears. He beat me, insulted me, and in the end, threw me out because I couldn't give him a child. I came back home with nothing but shame. But look at me now, I survived." Chizaram listened, eyes wide. She had never heard this before. "Listen, child. This society will push you to the edge. And when you fall, they will still blame you for landing badly," Nora said, her voice stronger now. "I've watched you grow, and I know the kind of heart you have. You're a good girl, Chizaram. You just made a terrible mistake." Chizaram wept again, but this time not from shame, but from relief. Let what happened guide you. Love is not something you can force. It comes, and when it comes, you will know that this one is for you. You see this thing called honey? It is sweet, but when you try to pour it down someone's throat by force, it becomes poison. She reached forward and held Chizaram's hand gently. "You will be fine. Trust me. And one day, you will find a man who will love you truly. A man you won't have to steal my soup for." Chizaram smiled faintly through her tears. So Nora had known all along. Before she left, Nora rose, walked into her hut and returned with a surprise. A fat, well-fed goat and an envelope of money. "Take this," she said. "Use it for the sacrifice and the soup. Let this be the end of this madness." That night, as Chizaram lay in bed, her heart no longer felt like a cracked pot. Nora's words echoed in her mind like a lullaby. "You will be fine. Trust me." And for the first time in many nights, she actually hoped it was true. Weeks had passed, and the echoes of chaos in the village had finally faded into whispers and old jokes. The spell that once sent grown men crawling after Chizaram had been broken, but the memory lingered like a stubborn stain. The villagers had moved on, but the shame still lingered. And as for Chizaram, she did the only thing she could do. She disappeared quietly from everything that reminded her of the madness. She avoided Ifena like he was carrying a contagious disease. If she saw him on the road, she crossed. If she heard his voice, she ducked behind baskets. There was no anger in her heart, only a quiet, aching embarrassment. She also stopped working at Nora's food joint. There were too many memories there. Nora, being the kind-hearted woman she was, didn't push or scold. Instead, she gave Chizaram a small loan and helped her start a modest fruit business at the far end of the village market. It wasn't much, but it was hers. People still stared. Some mocked her to her face. Children sometimes whispered fruit love portion and burst into laughter. But Chizaram didn't flinch. She had seen the worst and lived to tell the tale. There was no shame in healing. She was learning to smile again. Not the kind of smile meant to impress anyone, but the kind that came from a peaceful heart. Then, one breezy afternoon, as she arranged her watermelons in neat pyramid, a young man approached her stall. There was something different about him. He didn't have the usual smug expression most village men wore. He wasn't chewing stick or adjusting his wrapper like a proud peacock. He walked in simply, asked for fruits, and paid quietly. Chizaram offered him a bright, sincere smile as she packed his fruits. He paused, just a little, then left. But he came back the next day, and the day after that, and the one after that. Every evening, without fail, he showed up. Each time, he bought a strange amount of fruit, enough to feed an entire village meeting, only to return again the next day for more. Chizaram, puzzled but amused, finally decided to ask him one day. One evening, as she handed him his third bunch of bananas for the week, she tilted her head and asked, Sir, if you don't mind me asking, do you actually eat all these fruits? The man looked up. His eyes were calm, kind, like warm morning sun after a cold Harmattan night. Are you sure you want to know? He replied with a teasing smile. Chizaram chuckled shyly. Yes, but that's if you want to tell me, of course. He leaned a little closer, his voice gentle. Well, I've been meaning to say this for a while. I come here every day for two reasons. One, I love the way your face lights up when I buy fruits from you. And two, I just really like seeing your face. Does that sound crazy? For a moment, Chizaram's breath caught in her chest. No man had ever spoken to her like that before. Not with such quiet admiration, not with such respect, not even Ifenna. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but she held her composure. She had learned not to leap at kind words. She smiled instead, softly, carefully. The man extended his hand. I am Adili, and I like you. I would love to be your friend. She shook his hand slowly. There was something about him, something grounded, honest, and gentle. He was handsome, yes, but there was more. He didn't make her feel like she had to perform or pretend. He simply showed up every day quietly. She didn't know much about him. Not yet, just that he had been coming for weeks, faithfully. That he watched her with kind eyes, and that he made her heart flutter, not with noise, but with peace. And maybe, just maybe, this was enough for a beginning. It began slowly. Simple evening visits, light laughter, stories shared under the fading sky, walks home with footprints pressed side by side in the dust. Chizaram didn't even know when it happened, but Adili had become her peace. There was something so calming about him. His silence never felt awkward. His presence was never overwhelming. He listened, he understood, and when he looked at her, oh, it was with eyes that made her feel like she mattered. Like she wasn't the girl the village mocked or pitied. Just Chizaram. She told him everything. Everything. The day she told him about the love potion saga, he almost choked with laughter. Who knew a beautiful and calm maiden like you could also be crazy? Yes, He didn't judge her for it. He had found it funny and crazy. And before the both of them knew it, they were deeply in love with each other. That they both couldn't stay a day apart. Every evening, she would wait eagerly at her stall, her heart leaping each time someone approached, until it was him, Adili, with that familiar smile, that steady gaze and a joke waiting on his lips. They talked till she closed the shop. Sometimes he would walk her home. Sometimes they just stood and laughed about things that made no sense. This went on for weeks. Then, one evening, he didn't show up. She waited and waited. She looked down the road every 2 minutes, smiling politely at passerbys, pretending not to be watching. But Adili never came. He hadn't said anything about traveling. He hadn't mentioned anything unusual. She realized painfully that she didn't even know where he lived. He had always come to her. Maybe something came up, she told herself, that first night. But then the next day came, and the next, and then a week passed. No Adili, no word, no message. And Chizaram began to feel something cold settle in her chest. She stopped looking down the road. She stopped keeping the ripe mangoes aside for him. She stopped waiting. Instead, she told herself the same story she had heard 1,000 times in whispers from other women. Men like Adili, they are just too good to be true. They appear, sweep you off your feet and vanish, leaving only a memory and a heart that won't stop asking why. She cried quietly every night. But in the morning, she wore her smile like a uniform and told herself that she had to move on. She had learned how to survive heartbreak. Then, weeks later, as the sun began to dip and the market buzzed with its usual late-day noise, a group of men stormed her fruit shed. They weren't smiling. "You must come with us immediately," one of them barked. "Do you know this man in this picture?" another shouted, shoving the picture in her face. It was Adili, the same gentle smile. Her heart stopped. Yes, I know him," she stammered, blinking in shock. "Why? What's happened?" "He's a thief," the man said coldly, "and he says you are his accomplice." "What? No, that's not true. He's been stealing from us for months. All the money he spends here at your fruit stall, they are stolen. He says you helped him hide it. You must come with us." "Please." "No, I don't know anything. I swear, I didn't know the money was stolen. Please, my grandmother is sick at home and I can't leave her." But her pleading fell on deaf ears. The men grabbed her arms roughly and began dragging her through the market. The baskets of her fruit tumbled to the ground. Her wrapper snagged on a stick. Her legs stumbled, and her voice trembled. The villagers turned. They followed, they whispered, "This girl again. Is she even cursed? Why does trouble always follow her around like houseflies?" Fruit seller turned fraudster. Chizaram's eyes burned as she tried to explain, but no one listened. The pain in her chest wasn't just heartbreak now. It was betrayal, humiliation, and despair. Once again, the whole villagers were watching her, but this time, no one was laughing. They stopped just at the edge of the village market road. Chizaram barely held her weight. Her wrapper was loose, her hands trembling, and her heart racing like it was trying to escape from her chest. The stares, the murmurs, the shame, it was happening again. Just when she thought her life had found its rhythm. Tears clouded her eyes as she looked from one angry face to another, wondering what her fate would be this time. Was she going to be locked away? Was this how her story would end? Dragged down by a man she trusted. Then, suddenly, a sound. The loud purr of an engine. A sleek black car rolled into view. The kind of car that only rich men in movies drove. The crowd parted in confusion as it came to a stop beside them. The doors opened, and when Adili stepped out, Chizaram nearly collapsed. He wasn't bruised. He wasn't handcuffed. He didn't even look like someone in trouble. He looked like a man who had just walked off a magazine cover. Clean cut, confident, handsome, and dripping in money. The crowd froze. Even the men who had dragged her halted like statues. The ones who had called him a thief were now bowing. "What's happening?" Chizaram asked, spinning in place, completely disoriented. Why were they bowing to Adili? And then Adili walked towards her, not in a rush, not in a panic, just calmly, confidently, with that signature smile that once made her knees weak. When he reached her, he knelt on his knees in front of everyone. "Chizaram," he said, his voice steady, and his eyes fixed on her like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. "Make me the happiest man on earth. Marry me." The market square erupted. Mouths fell open. Women clutched their wrappers like the Holy Spirit had entered the scene. Someone dropped a basket of tomatoes, and Chizaram, she stood there trembling. Just minutes ago, she had been ready to curse the day she was born. Just minutes ago, she had thought Adili had betrayed her, and now he was on his knees asking her to be his wife. She shook her head, trying to process it all. The same people who had mocked her were now gasping, clapping, shouting. "Na lie. Fine billionaire is proposing to Chizaram. This life, God must be the perfect scriptwriter." Some villagers cheered joyfully. People who had always loved her quietly. "Say yes now. Don't keep that handsome money back on the floor. We are all invested already," one old woman shouted. But Chizaram, she had questions. "Who are you, Adili?" she asked, tears spilling from her cheeks. "First, you disappeared without a word. Left me crying like a fool. And just now, I was dragged out of my shed, accused of being your accomplice in some crazy theft story. Do you enjoy torturing me like this? How crazy can you get?" Adili smiled, his eyes still soft. "Isn't that why we are perfect for each other? You with your magical soup, me with my fake kidnapping and love tricks. We are both crazy, Chizaram. Can't you see? Let's do this crazy life together." A laugh burst from Chizaram's throat before she could stop it. A full, unfiltered laugh through tears. Of course, she knew he was talking about the love portion, the madness that started it all. She wiped her tears, looked at the man on his knees and smiled. "Yes, Adili, I will marry you. Come on, let's do this crazy life together." The crowd exploded into cheers. Drummers seemed to appear out of nowhere. Women clapped and ululated. Someone even started spraying her with naira notes. And right there, Adili stood, pulled her into a gentle hug, and kissed her. Softly, tenderly, the kind of kiss that silenced the entire square. It was the sweetest proposal the village had ever witnessed. Adili took Chizaram to meet his family, and that was the day everything finally made sense. They arrived at a grand estate nestled between rolling hills just outside Awka. The house was so big. Chizaram wasn't sure whether to walk or take a commercial motorbike from the gate to the front door. It was there, sitting in the lush garden, that Adili told her the truth. He wasn't just some man from a neighboring village. He was Adili Obinna Okafo, a billionaire businessman with chains of companies across the country. His face was on magazines. His name was spoken in boardrooms. He was the type of man maidens fasted and prayed to meet. But Chizaram had met him, wearing her faded clothes and selling fruits in the market. I have searched for love for many years, Adili told her, holding her hand. But all I found was pretense. I was tired, Chizaram. I had even given up. That evening, I only came to Awka to inspect a building project. But I just walked into the market to get some fruits. Then I saw you. And somehow, I knew this is where my heart wants to stay. Tears welled in Chizaram's eyes. Her entire life, she had suffered, she had been mocked, ridiculed, called unlucky, and yet love had found her when she least expected it. Adeli's family welcomed her warmly. His mother called her my jewel and held her close, thanking her for making her son smile again. His sisters showered her with gifts and laughter. And then, just a few weeks later, the wedding came. Awka village had never seen such a celebration. It wasn't just elaborate, it was legendary. Horses, cars, music, food that made grown men cry. Guests from all over the country flooded the village. Even the same maidens who once mocked her, the same ones who said she looked like a rejected sacrifice, were now hiding behind fans, blushing in shame, watching her dance like the queen she had become. As she twirled joyfully beside her husband, the lesson hit home for everyone watching. Truly, everyone has their own appointed time. After the ceremony, Chizaram paid a heartfelt visit to Unora, her second mother, her rock through the storms. She came with bags of gifts and a grateful heart. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for standing with me. I'll be moving to the city with Adili, but I will never forget what you did for me. Nora hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. You deserve this joy, my daughter. Go and shine. Chizaram didn't forget Mama Iji either, the woman whose love advice had once turned her into the village comedian. She visited her with laughter and a full basket. Your tips nearly killed me, Chizaram joked, but somehow they still led me to love. They both laughed till tears rolled down Mama Eji's cheeks. And of course, Uremma, her precious grandmother, was not left behind. Chizaram took her to the city, vowing never to leave her alone. I will find you the best doctors, she whispered. You will rest, Mama, and you will smile again. And then, with one last wave, she looked at Awka, the village that had made her cry, that had made her laugh, that had made her who she was. She smiled, she forgave, and she said goodbye. Now in the city, beside the love of her life, Chizaram days became a beautiful dream. There was laughter in the morning, kisses in the afternoon, and joy at night. They built a home filled with peace and purpose. They were blessed with beautiful children, strong, joyful children, full of life. And as the years rolled by, one thing remained true. They lived happily ever after. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this story and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. I want to use this opportunity to wish you a very beautiful and happy new month. Thank you besties for always supporting, always encouraging, and thank you so much for your kind words.